So, good morning. I'm so excited to see people joining this morning. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jessica Anderson. I am an IBCLC and I am the owner of Genuine Lactation. I specialize in pumping and specifically the wearable pumps that we all love to use but hate to learn how to use. So, today we are going to be focusing on one of our most popular wearables and we're going to go over some basic information about what the pump is, how it works, and what you should know if you are considering getting this pump. So, today we're going to be talking about the Willow 360, which as of just a few weeks ago was known as the Willow 3.0. This pump has been on the market in essentially the same configuration since early 2020. It did get a recent rebrand and it did have a couple changes that we're going to talk about. So, when the 3.0 launched in 2020, it was the newest generation. It followed the Willow Gen 1 and Gen 2, which were very different machines. So when you are reading reviews, be sure that you mark when they're talking about their machine. Willow Gen 1 and Gen 2 were a little bit heavy duty, higher cycle speeds. We saw a lot more success with it. The 3.0 is a little bit less aggressive, which I think a lot of people like, but it is running slower cycle speeds. So that makes for a little bit more comfortable pumping experience for a lot of people, but maybe not as effective as a pumping experience as we saw with the Gen 1 and Gen 2. The 3.0 did have some quality issues. We did see a huge decline. It's hard to say why that was happening, but there were some internal parts that really became very problematic, and we were seeing that they weren't lasting. With the 360, I would say that we've got a return to quality of what we saw in early 2020. So essentially, we've corrected the problems. I wouldn't necessarily call it any innovation or change, but we are back to a little bit higher quality machines. So we have a little bit less concern about this. But let's talk about what this actually is. So this is a fully contained wearable pump. So this is your pump motor. You can see you've got little motorized arms. You've got one down here. And this is going to set up with, this is their container or the bags. So the bags are technically single use, but you'll see lots of things on social media about reusing the bags. That was a much more popular hack before the containers were released in 2019. But what this essentially is this flex tube right here is going to fit into the arms of the pump, and the pump is going to actually move them. You're going to have a complete air seal here at the breast because this is a constant suction pump. So unlike standard pumps where it's a pull and release and the suction is released in between each pulse, this one is going to pull and it just pulses gently. It does not fully release. So it's constant suction on the nipple. And this is going to control the flow of milk. So what ends up happening is milk is going to fill this area here from your nipple. It's going to eventually rise to the point that when that arm is pressing, this little pressure sensor, once it detects that this is full, this little foot right here is going to kick out. It's going to pinch off the bottom of your flex tube here. And then when this is squeezed, it's going to force the milk through this lovely one-way valve that you'll see in here. This valve is part of the reason that the pump works, but it's also part of the reason the containers may actually drive you batty. It's just a kind of a design issue. So it's going to force it through here. With the containers, these are not 100% leak proof. There is a tiny air hole up here. It has to have air exchange when you're pumping with the containers, otherwise your container would explode. So there's a tiny air hole here, but it does have a little lever that you can press. And when you need to do flip to finish, which is how you get the last remaining milk from your pump session, which likely will not have filled this and will still be sitting in here when you take the pump off, that's what's going to allow you to use this container in a leak-free fashion for a few cycles to do the flip to finish. Flip to finish is just this lovely term for when you take this off, this is going to be full of milk and you're going to slowly rotate it in time with the machine. They do actually have a really great video of that in their app. So that's going to teach you how to do that. Flip to finish is just one of those learned skills you'll have to learn. If you are using the single-use bags, what you're going to have is you're going to have this flange here. This does have an insert in it, but it does come as a 24 and 27. So you're likely going to need to use an insert to bring it down in size. We'll talk about that in a minute. But these bags do not require any type of air exchange. So the bag is just going to fill. So when you're using the bags, this is a truly leak-free in any position. You technically do have 360 degrees of range of movement, which is something that no other pump on the market can currently do. So this is why Despite all of the drama that this pump brings to our lives, we continue to want to work with it. That leak-free pumping is something that no other pump can achieve. And even with the wearable or the reusable containers, you're still talking a level of leak resistance that no other pump has technically been able to achieve. This is providing more freedom for pumping moms. It allows you to pump in environments. These bags allow you to pump in unsanitary environments without risking contaminating your milk. It's kind of almost seems too good to be true. It does come at a cost though. This pump is difficult to work with, so it requires a lot of expertise. This is heavy. This is a 1 pound nipple weight. So this is going to be latched to your nipple. It is 1 pound. It is big. So it is going to require you to make sure that you have the flange sizing right. The flange sizing rules for this pump don't actually differ from any other pump. Our goal is to have only the nipple in the tunnel with unrestricted movement of the nipple and no areola in the tunnel. Because of the constant nature suction of this pump, we do see that we need to use a slightly smaller flange insert than what we typically do with a standard pump. We need to get closer to exact size for most women. It's going to depend on your anatomy, it's going to depend on your elasticity, but the important thing is we need to get close to exact. You're going to need to nail the bra fit with this. The older Gen 1 and Gen 2 had a very rigid cover. The 360 has a slightly more rigid cover, which is this housing here. The 3.0 does not have a rigid cover. It actually has a lot more flex in it than what you would expect. That has meant that if bra size is not correct, you will damage the pump. If you do not have this properly supported and properly sealed, we're going to get excess movement in these arms here because everything's going to be slightly shifting. What ends up happening is there's this nice, we call it almost like a fault line. It goes from up here, runs down into here right next to your mechanical arms, all the way down into here. And this is the line that it seems to flex on, and you will eventually get cracks in your machine. Willow used to replace the pumps for cracks when they were still at the aesthetic point because we knew that they would fail. They're no longer doing that. And if your pump is not under warranty, when it cracks, you're kind of done. It's just a matter of time as to how long your pump is going to work for. A big thing that surprises people is the expenses that come with operating this pump. These flex tubes are good for about 60 to 90 days. Willow still says 90 days. I would say they were 90 days with the original ones for Gen 1, Gen 2, and the original Gen 3. What we're seeing now, 60 days is about pushing it. By 90 days, we have a remarkable decrease in suction and output. So most people are going to find they need to replace these a little bit more often. If you are hand washing these, you're going to get the maximum life. If you're putting them in a dishwasher, they are going to start to break down. We do see a lot of times if you are putting these in a dishwasher or a sterilizer, this top cap here will come apart. When that comes apart, it is no longer safe to use these parts. So you will need to replace these quite frequently. The containers are a fantastic way to cut some of your expenses, but again, there are some shortcomings here. So the container is essentially a bowl with a locking flange. This flange here, these seals are not 100% and you can't take them off. If you take these off, you will end up causing damage to your pump. You will void the warranty on it. These tend to last about 90 to 180 days, so 3 to 6 months before you may need to replace these. If you put these together wet, because of the nature of the thing, even with the tiny air hole open, if these get put together wet too often, you will end up with mold. Eventually, these seals will break down even if you do everything right, so you will have to periodically replace these. The container backing tends to be a little bit more durable. I would say that they easily last about 6 months. The big thing is going to be that one-way valve up here at the top. So in the single-use bags, the same one-way valve is considered good for one use. With this, we're trying to wash a part that is exceptionally difficult to wash. It's very fragile. It's very easy to damage. I will say that the valve in the bag and the valve in the container are the same. So a lot of people actually just take the valve out of the bag when they need to replace it and put that in there. It is fairly easy to do with tweezers. It is not exactly like rocket science, but it is somewhat time consuming. You'll have to decide if that's something you want to do. I don't recommend only buying the containers. If you're only using the containers, you are unlikely to be getting enough benefit from this pump to see the full justification for the amount of work. And the reason for that work is the program. So this pump is hard to adjust to. It is running a very unique program that we don't see on any other pump on the market. So when this pump starts, it's going to start in stimulation mode, which is that short light suction. This pump is designed to only give you 2 minutes in stimulation, and then it's supposed to automatically kick over to expression, which is running about 42 cycles per minute, which is just too low if the milk is not flowing yet. So with this pump, in exchange for leak-free, fully discrete pumping, what we're operating with is a suboptimal program, which means we have to put more work into it. The earlier postpartum you are when you try to adjust to this pump, the easier it is. If you are 2 to 3 weeks postpartum, I can typically have you adjusted in about 7 to 14 days. If you are 6 to 12 weeks postpartum, it's going to take a little bit more work, but 2 to 3 weeks, we should be good. If you get closer to 6 months postpartum, we really start to run into issues. After 9 months postpartum, you could be easily looking at 6 weeks to adjust to this. And by adjusting, we mean a process of we train your body to respond. Your letdown reflex is a trained reflex. And if you want to learn more about that reflex and how you can use it with pumping, we do have a class coming up on Friday that will be linked on my website. But your letdown reflex is essentially a trained reflex. So we have to train it to respond to this unique suction. This is not suction like anything else. It is also not suction like a baby, like Willow will tell you. Yes, a baby is using constant suction at the breast, but a baby's also not just sucking on your nipple and holding it and pulsing it. A baby's using their tongue to move the nipple. There's all kinds of things going on that this pump simply can't replicate. So you're trying to teach your body to respond to a program that automatically shifts, and it may not be in time with your letdown, and then it's running at a really slow rate. And you actually can't go back to stimulation mode on this pump for whatever reason. No one knows why they have originally made the design that way or why they've never corrected it. It does make the pump infinitely harder to work with. At one point, they were saying, oh, well, if you could go back and forth, we'd see more issues with nipple damage. We know based on another constant suction wearable on the market with the Tommy Tippy wearable that even though that wearable ended up not being a huge success, the program proved you can adjust faster when you have access to all the levels. And we weren't seeing any additional issues. So that is kind of a design flaw for Willow. You are trying to operate this pump with this suboptimal program. We do have an adjustment protocol that is based on how we know hundreds, if not thousands of women have had to work to adjust it. It just takes time. You can expect, like I said, at least 10 to 14 days for most people. Some people get lucky and their body just responds really well to it. And it could be that they're early postpartum, the hormones are still in our favor. Their body really likes constant suction. I got really lucky. My body really likes constant suction. So I adjusted to the Gen 2 pretty fast. When I tried to use a 3.0, when my baby was much older, it was a lot harder. The 360 feels a lot like the original 3.0 did. I would imagine it would be the same situation. We haven't had any new indicators that the 360 is working faster or not working as fast. It appears to essentially be just a 3.0 that's maybe had some corrections to some quality control issues. So with all of that said, there's a couple things that we tend to see that kind of trip people up. The first one being, you go to use it and it looks like it's broken because the milk fills here, but it doesn't go into the container. Because with a traditional pump, let me grab a flange. The traditional pump, when you're pumping, your milk is going to quickly go into the collection container. The nature of how this pump works means that you don't always go straight into the collection container. It does have to build up enough pressure because that is what is operating it, is a pressure sensor. The new pumps do appear to have a little bit better of a pressure sensor in them. So previously we saw that there were lots of issues where the pump would read air that was being sucked in around the nipple due to bra fit, bad flange size, sometimes damage to the machine, as milk. The new one, we're seeing that it's a little bit more sensitive and responsive because the air is not quite the same pressure, but it is still having that issue to a slightly less degree. The next thing is people get this hooked up to the app and it is reading crazy numbers. We'll see that it tells you pumped 80 ounces in 5 minutes. Clearly you didn't. The pump only actually holds 4.5. There are some hacks we'll talk about in a minute for how people get around that 4.5 ounce cutoff, but it starts reading excess air. So there is often a lot of troubleshooting that's involved because if the pump is reading excess air, we have air getting in someplace. With this machine, when we go to troubleshoot it, the only way to troubleshoot what is the difference between how you're using the pump and a machine failure is to optimize everything you're doing with the pump to confirm the failure still continues. we can't assume it's the machine because the issues present exactly the same way, curiously enough. It does make for fun troubleshooting. There is a reason that Willow has larger, more involved, skilled groups trying to support moms in using it. It's because it's simply not the easiest machine ever to use. Again, it's the price we pay for that leak-free pumping. Why can't you go back to stimulation? Again, it's just a programming thing. It does make it harder because we have to teach your body to have a letdown without that stimulation, which is the opposite of how your body wants to work. Let's talk about the pumping output cap. So this is designed to cut off at 4.5 ounces. But go on social media and you're going to see all these moms who have really full containers. And they're like, oh, well, I just left it on there and it continued to pump like a haka. What that means is that until you physically unlatch the pump, it is still suctioned to your breast. Some people will respond to low level constant suction with no pulsing, no cycle speeds. Some people will respond really well to that. So what they'll do is they'll use the pump to hit that 4.5 ounce mark, and then essentially they're just letting it sit to continue to have letdowns, just like people are with those Haka passive pumps. With bags, you'll see this commonly too, because what people do is instead of assembling it with the bag inside, they hook it up and it's called bags out. So you're going to have your bag on the outside so that the bag can actually expand to hold closer to 8 to 9 ounces. And it's again the same thing. Does that mean that everybody can pump that amount with this pump? Absolutely not, because a lot of people don't respond to the Haka style suction. A lot of people, once the pulsing and the cycling stops, the milk stops flowing. So that could be a concern for people, because with this pump, it's not easy. If you're using a traditional flange setup and you need to empty a container, you pull it off, you put it back on, and that's not going to disrupt the pump session for most people. Because of the constant suction nature, oftentimes when you pull your nipple out of this machine, it is very cylindrical, it is very firm, and what you're going to see is that trying to get the pump recentered back on your nipple can be next to impossible. So for a lot of people, the first run with the pump is all you can do with this pump. 4.5 ounces on each side is going to be enough for the average mom, because most moms make 1 to 1.5 ounces per hour since last emptying their breast. So that if they're emptying their breast every 2 to 3 hours, which is common and what we would hope for, then they're not going to be exceeding that volume. But we do have a lot of people who do exceed that volume. And for them, they do have to use these workarounds. We do have lots of hacks. But again, despite the fact that this can hold more milk, Willow has it set up. Their programming continues to be one of our sources of frustration. The other question I frequently get asked is, can you use this pump if you have large breasts? Absolutely. We have moms up to M and O cups using this pump. The size of your breast does not dictate your success with this pump. The fit of your bra will dictate your success with this pump. The larger the cup size, the less options we have for bras, so the trickier the fits get. We are sometimes stuck with a very limited range of options. So for the most part, though, we can make it work. We do have some hacks as well for modifying bras to kind of make a bra work that wouldn't have ordinarily worked with the just straight off the shelf sizing. So we do have tricks and tips up our sleeves, because this pump used to be a $500 luxury pump. And in 2017, 2018, 2019, investing $500 in a pump that wasn't covered by insurance meant you were investing in your pumping situation. And a lot of moms were really, really committed, because you couldn't just get this from your insurance company. You had to go out of your way and invest. And at one point, all you had available was bags, which meant you invested that initial fee and then you were expected to spend a couple hundred a month on keeping your bags going, on keeping your pump parts fresh. So we had a lot of moms who worked really hard to figure out how to work with these machines, and we have a lot of tips and tricks from them. That is not to say if your insurance covers it that you won't be committed. It just means we do see a different level of commitment to it, which is why we see a lot higher failure rate now in terms of how many moms try the pump and don't find success, because sometimes it's not worth it to them. And if you're trying to use this pump and your plan was to just use the container, you don't really need leak free, you don't really need the wearable option, it is really hard to commit to the level of effort it takes to learn to use this pump. We see just as many moms who struggle and then commit to the plans that we can come up with for them. We get the bra sizing, we get the flange sizing dialed in, they're able to make it work. So Yes, this pump is hard to work with, but we do see a lot of success with it. And in terms of that leak free, that range of motion, this one is still a clear winner on the market and is one I definitely think you should consider. So I just threw a bunch of information out there. So does anybody have any questions that's with us live? If not, I do have some questions that some of my clients sent in beforehand. You can either type your questions in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself, you can ask them live, whatever works for you.
Hi, Jessica, can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Hi, I'm Emily. Thank you so much. I hopped on a couple minutes late, but I think I got the gist of everything. So I'm 5 months postpartum. I've been using the Willow pretty much at least like once a day since my baby was born, and being back to work, obviously using it like 3 or 4 times a day now. And it has been very frustrating. But I've been working with a lactation consultant, so I think I got the right sizing down. But I'm considering just like going back to my Spectra just for life because the Spectra is like tried and true and my output is great. But I'm gonna be in a wedding when I'm 7 months postpartum. So the wearable Willow is really appealing for just like basically I'm not gonna have my baby with me at all during the day. So I'm trying to figure out like, okay, if um um basically I break from the Willow, like, now until the wedding. So like it's less than 2 months from now. Um, is it basically going to be ineffective by the time, like, is my body going to have to like readjust to it? You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. So, yes, what we see is that if you take a break from this pump and you're not using regularly, you will unadjust to it. And it would not be a realistic expectation or a solid plan for your success on the day of that wedding to suddenly pull this out and hope that it works. Some people get really lucky, and that's fantastic. But for the most part, we see that that ends up in a lot of tears. My question to you would be, how long is it taking you to pump with the Spectra? How often do you need to pump? Because we can often find a way to make the Spectra work for a day for you, even
Okay.
if it is a little bit crazy. I mean, breastfeeding gets a little crazy sometimes, and mixing breastfeeding and living your life can definitely require some creativity, but we can typically make it work. And in your case, I would wonder if the Willow brings enough value to the table for you to justify the amount of work that it would put in.
That's what I've taken away from the session so far, as I don't think it's worth it for me because I'm I mean, I have a toddler at home, and so when I'm, playing with my toddler, the leak free is nice, um which is why I ended up getting this one versus, the LV. Um, but the reality is I'm not pumping as much at home anymore than when I was still on maternity leave. So um yeah. So yeah, I don't think it's worth it for me. But if I'm yeah, I'd be curious what and maybe this is a different conversation just about how to make the Spectra work on the wedding day, because at that point my baby's going to be on solids and I'm not going to be pumping as much or needing to nurse or pump as much. Um, so,
So, what I would recommend is if you're not already a part of the wearable pump paperweight prevention group, come on over to that group and make a post so that one of my amazing team members can talk you through like what all the options are. Because
okay.
coming up with creative fixes, all of my team members ended up being team members in this group because we all were breastfeeding parents who had to get really creative to make some really crazy situations work. We can
Okay.
help you find a solution. The Willow is one possible solution, and we can go over what it would look like and what you would need to do to make that a viable option for that day so that you have all that plan laid out in front of you and then you can make an informed choice on it.
Okay.
Willow's only one possible solution. I don't recommend anybody marry themselves to any one plan because that's how things fail.
Yeah. No, thank you. What was that group called? I'm new to genuine lactation, so
So it's called Wearable Pump Paperweight Prevention. It looks like Lisa actually just dropped the link in the chat for you. So if you want to grab that, just go ahead and put in there that you were with us on the live.
okay. Okay, great. And if I'm not on Facebook, can I still join that? That's
Um,
the
if you don't have an active Facebook profile, just shoot me an email after this and we will figure out how to
okay.
get you the access to it.
Okay, great. I will do that. Okay. Thank
All
you.
right. So glad to help you. Okay, so let me come over here. So Stephanie asked, if somebody responds to the Haka, would you assume they would respond to this pump? If somebody's responding to the Haka, that is a strong indicator that they are likely to respond well to constant suction, but it's not a guarantee because the Haka and the Willow do operate fairly differently. I would say it's a higher than average chance. I would say on average, about 70% of people who try the Willow can realistically be successful with it. About 30% will fail, even if they do everything right with it. If you're using the Haka, I might move that number to closer to like 80% would be okay with it, and 20% would fail. So that is a good indicator, but it's not necessarily a guarantee, if that makes sense. If that doesn't answer your question, just let me know.
Jessica, this is Tia. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm kind of in the same boat as Emily and thinking I'm not sure if this is for me. So, a little background, my body responds very good to the Haka. I manual pump. I usually don't use the one that plugs into the wall. I typically manually pump.
Okay.
Um, and I think I was considering a wearable just because I do work from home with the baby here, but I am like in my office locked up at least 8
Okay.
hours a day. Um, but I'm trying to see now, after you just spoke with Emily, I'm not sure if it's the best investment. And do I just need to see if I can make my manual pump work or maybe my wall plug-in? I don't like that one as much, but my body responds very well to just, I mean, even hand expressing, I'm like getting 3 ounces.
Okay.
So I'm
So
not sure.
it would depend on exactly what you were hoping to achieve with the wearable. For a lot of people, what the wearable can bring to the table is the ability to slide the wearable in your bra, and once you've learned to use it, to basically pump on autopilot. So
Hmm.
for some people, like you responding really well to the manual, but some people taking that break to use the manual may not be long term sustainable. Whereas if we can teach you to use the wearable, you just slide it in and go about your day. And one of
Okay.
the advantages of this is it does fit completely in your shirt. Aside from the fact that your profile will look a little Dolly Parton like, it is completely hidden from view and it's not super loud. So I wouldn't call it disruptive in the work environment at all.
Okay.
So it is a level of discreet that you just can't replicate with the hand pump. How far postpartum are you?
8 weeks.
So if you're 8 weeks, we would still stand a really good chance of helping you to adjust. If you did want to look at the Willow 3.0, I would want you to know that you would likely need to use it several times a week after the adjustment period to stay adjusted. But once you've
Okay.
adjusted, most moms can get away with using it, 3 to 5 times during a week and not having any issues continuing to respond other than just needing to adjust sizing periodically over time. So it's
Okay.
definitely an option for you, but there are also other wearables that are maybe a little less finicky that you could also look at.
Okay.
I would encourage you to look at quite a few options in that situation and then to know that if the wearable pump is working or the manual pump is working well for you, it's also an option to just keep using the manual pump.
I think the biggest thing is just breaking away. Like sometimes there's back-to-back calls, and I think what's attractive about the wearable is I can just slip that on and don't have to worry about, okay, I have to break away. Like I have to figure out how to create a break to go manually pump.
So in that case, I do think a wearable is a good fit for you. It would just be a matter of which wearable you want it to look at. And with the Willow 3.0, if what you wanted was that wearable and you like the idea of having that leak-free backup,
Hmm.
then you are in that window where yes, it would take us a couple weeks. We would want to get flange and bra fit dialed in and then work the adjustment protocol. But with a
Okay.
few weeks of effort, 2 to 3 times a day, you would have the ability to pump with this pump and it really shouldn't be quite as dramatic.
Okay. Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you so much. And I guess my other question really quick is what are next steps if we want to try to like work with you? Do we just go to that events link that Lisa posted in there?
So that one is just another live event like this. It's just going to be a focus class on letdowns. On my website is going to be all the links to work with us privately. And then we do have the wearable pump paperweight group for like less individualized care. So
Okay.
it's really about what works for you and what you're looking for. Our
Okay.
job, or really what we view our job as and our role in this, is to provide you with the information so that you can make the choices that you want to support your pumping journey.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you,
You're
Lisa.
so welcome.
Good with these links.
Lisa's the best. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Because we've actually covered the list that mom sent ahead of time. So if no one does, then we will let you get back to your day.
I have a few more questions, but I wanted to give other people a chance to
Sure,
chat.
let's go.
Um, are the individual consults like are they covered under insurance or
It depends on your insurance company.
okay.
I do have a collaboration with the Lactation Network. So some people are able to get their insurance approved through Lactation Network, and then Lactation Network and I have an agreement that it's covered. We do have
Okay.
self-pay options, and we always have the option to give you a super bill to request reimbursement from your insurance company.
Okay, great. And then I had another question about the bra sizing that you
Sure.
mentioned. Um, I guess just like how do you go about that? I know I'm not on Facebook, so I'll have to get with you about how to figure out and I'll send you an email how to get that kind of like group community sharing tips. But yeah, how do we I have the Willow bra, like I ended up getting the Willow special like bra on their website and it I don't know if it's like making a difference or not, but
Okay.
yeah, with like a standard bra, like or a non-Willow bra, how would you
So we
go about
actually don't
sizing?
have we don't have any one brand of bra that we would say is like the magical fix for everybody. What we're looking for is a bra that's going to be fit for your body. What we consistently see is that most moms are wearing a band size that's too big and a cup size that's too small. Because of the way bras are sized, a D cup is not the same across all different sizes. It means that it's 4 inches bigger in projection than your underbust or your band size.
Uh-huh.
So a 32D is not the same as a 36D. But if you wear a 32G, you can just keep sizing up in the band until you eventually get to the cup size that's right for you with a band size that's too big. So what we're looking for is we're looking for the band underneath of your bust to be nice and snug. I refer to it as like a shelf underneath of your breast. And especially, like I said before, these are 1 pound nipple weights. We want to make sure that they are properly supported or they're just going to pull down on the tissue and cause pain, or they're going to be shoved back and actually cause bruising in your breast tissue. So it's very unpleasant.
Yeah.
We use the calculator called the Boober Bust calculator. We have found that that gives us the most reliable way to measure to help get people to a appropriately sized pumping bra. So
Okay.
we always recommend go measure the way that they say, and then we have a whole list of bras that we have found that work. When we put a bra on my blog that says that this works with wearables, it's because we've tested it with 20 different wearables to confirm it's working in all the situations. And if it doesn't work for everything, we clarify that, LV pumps are going to be more trim than a Willow pump. So with Willow, you really want to make sure that you've got good bra support because it is really big and it's very heavy. It is one of our heaviest and largest wearables on the market.
Yeah, when I'm using it, I don't feel like it's like weighing me down as much. So I've thought, well, maybe I don't have any issues with the bra, but I'm just wondering if like
I mean,
I don't want my that fault line to happen, right?
it's always something that we can check. Bra fit gets a little bit tricky, so we do offer bra fit checks in the group, or we offer them with private consultations for people who want to keep that information off the internet. And
Sure.
we do help women all the time to help figure out, is this the right bra for you? Would a different bra get you better results? And what is the best solution for you?
Okay. Okay. And then I just thought to share something, especially like Tia, based on, yeah, you're considering the pump, something that I learned from their customer care recently, which Jessica, you may already know, is so it's really important to wash the pumps with water. Like all the parts like in between uses, which I don't have that luxury, right? I mean, unless I want to like carry all my stuff to like our staff kitchen, which I just got by like with my first baby using like the pump wipes to clean my spectra and it was fine.
Mhm.
And then I would like, wash them in soap and water at the end of the day. And so I've been doing that with my Willow and I'm realizing that it's like actually like now I need to do a deep clean because it just kind of adds more wear and tear on the pump when you aren't like thoroughly rinsing them.
It all goes back to this valve in here. It's a
Yeah.
one-way valve, and
Learn
milk fat Milk fat is one of the stickiest substances I have ever encountered. It is right up there with like slime and silly putty. It likes to get into the grooves of things and not come out. And with this valve, it's very easy to get milk fat buildup, particularly if you're using the fridge hack because milk fat solidifies at the colder temperatures. I'll have Lisa drop a link for the mouth swabs that we have found that work really, really well. I
Okay,
have been walking around for years with a little stockpile of mouth swabs in every diaper bag and pump bag I've ever owned because you can take this little mouth swab, stick it in here, and actually clean that valve off in between for people who want to be able to use the fridge hack with it.
great.
Alternatively, the bags are not nearly as finicky with a fridge hack, and we do actually have tips on how you can reuse the bags. They're not actually single use. They typically, you can get a couple uses out of them. Prior to the
Without the
containers, it
air.
was a very common hack. You just squeeze it out. The valve, I can actually show you. So this valve is sitting there. You can literally just take your fingernail and slide it out of place. You can actually see the little stem right here flex
Uh,
as I'm pulling on it. Or you can actually stick like a little coffee stirrer. The little green ones
hmm.
from Starbucks work really well for me. You just stick it in that little hole to create it and then just squeeze it out into your bottle, squeeze out all the air and slide the valve back in place.
Okay, good to know.
It's one of
A
those,
secondary option is also the citric acid wash or soap. I can link that video, but
yes.
that works for that valve too.
Yeah, that'd be great. Um,
So we've got lots of ways to wash these pumps. We've got different wash routines depending on your needs, what issues you're having that we would recommend to help
mhm.
keep your pump clean because there is nothing more frustrating than that orange light when there's milk fat on the valve.
I
Um,
know, and it says flush with water, and I'm like, I'm locked in my office. I'm not gonna go do that right now. I'm already latched. Like,
I've never taken my Willow pump out of the house without having at least two sets of containers or having extra bags because the orange light will reduce me to rage. I threw a brand new set of containers away early postpartum because they orange lighted me one too many times. And I was a bag user, so I had no patience for this pump talking back.
yeah,
Uh, we did eventually learn how to use them, but early on, a lot of people had a lot of problems because we didn't know what we could do with it yet.
yeah. Okay,
There's a lot
great.
of
This is
learned
all
wisdom.
yeah, yeah. This is all super helpful. What was that you said? Mouth swab something or other?
Yes. And we'll link that and I'll add those in the YouTube video of this as well.
Okay, great.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, it looks like we are good to go for the day. So thank you guys so much for joining us. We will have 2 of these a week for the next couple weeks as we're preparing for summer vacation, going over the different wearables and the different portables that you might want to consider. So hopefully you guys either have decided the Willow's for you or you want to come back and talk about another pump so we can help you find that perfect wearable pump. But thank you guys so much for being here today and I look forward to working with you in the future.